When 65-year-old Brad trusted his son with insurance paperwork, he never imagined it would lead to being abandoned at an Alaska airport with nothing but $25. What his son didn't expect was his father's determination to fight back. Sometimes the people closest to you are the most dangerous. I came back from the restroom to find my son and daughter-in-law huddled together like they were plotting something. Trevor and Amanda, heads bent close, whispering with an intensity that stopped cold the second I got within 10 feet. They sprang apart like I'd caught them stealing cookies. "Everything okay?" I settled into my seat at gate 12, watching them carefully. "You two have been awfully quiet this morning." Trevor didn't look up from his phone. His thumbs moved across the screen, but his eyes weren't tracking anything. Just scrolling, just avoiding. "Fine, Dad. Just tired from the trip." Amanda's smile came too fast, too bright, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "We're just ready to get home, Brad. Can't wait to sleep in our own bed." Our own bed. In my house, where they'd been living rent-free for 2 years. "My name's Brad Mitchell, I'm 65 years old, and I should have seen this coming. But when it's your own son, you don't expect betrayal. You expect gratitude." We still had 90 minutes before our flight back to Portland. The week in Alaska visiting my brother had been good. Fishing, stories, the kind of family time I thought we'd lost after my wife Sarah passed 22 years ago, when Trevor was just 15. But something had shifted this morning. The air between us felt thick. Wrong. I'm 65 years old. I raised Trevor mostly by myself after his mother died. Built an engineering consulting firm from nothing, and sold it 5 years ago for enough money to retire comfortably. I didn't get there by ignoring my gut. And my gut was screaming. I watched Trevor's thumbs scroll and scroll, watched Amanda fidget with her boarding pass, folding and unfolding the paper until the creases went soft. Neither one looked at me. 20 minutes crawled by. Then Trevor stood up abruptly, too abruptly, like he'd been waiting for some invisible signal. "Dad, we need water and some snacks for the flight." He pulled a $25 bill from his wallet, pressed it into my palm. His fingers felt cold despite the terminal heat. "You know what we all like. Can you grab stuff for everyone?" I started to rise. "Sure, son. We can all go." "No?" The word came out sharp. He softened it with a smile that didn't fit his face. "You go ahead. I need to make a work call, and Amanda has to hit the restroom." The insistence in his voice didn't match the simple errand. He stepped back, creating distance, his eyes fixed on something past my shoulder, anywhere but my face. I looked at Amanda. She was already staring at her phone, her jaw set in that way it gets when she's made up her mind about something. "All right." I took the money, felt its crispness between my fingers. "I'll be right back." The airport shop was small, tucked between a car rental counter and a coffee stand selling overpriced lattes. I took my time studying the shelves. Trevor liked the expensive water, the kind with the fancy label that cost 3 times what it should. I grabbed 3 bottles, trail mix for Amanda. She always wanted the one with dried cranberries. Protein bars for me. The checkout line moved like molasses. A family ahead of me had 2 crying children and a stroller blocking half the aisle. The mother looked exhausted, frantically digging through her purse while the baby screamed. I helped her count out her change. She thanked me, her eyes grateful. 12 minutes passed, maybe 14. I rounded the corner back to gate 12 with the plastic shopping bag in hand, already thinking about how Trevor would roll his eyes at me for buying the fancy water he pretended not to prefer. The seats were empty. Not just empty, cleared. No backpacks, no jackets draped over chairs, no sign that anyone had been sitting. In seats 15, 16, and 17. Other passengers occupied different chairs now, scrolling phones, reading magazines, drinking coffee, oblivious. The shopping bag slipped from my fingers. I yanked my backpack off my shoulder, hands shaking as I unzipped the main compartment. My spare shirt was there. Toiletry bag. Phone charger. Nothing else. The inner pocket where my passport always stayed. Empty. I checked the side pocket with my wallet. Gone. Front compartment where I kept my phone. Nothing. My hands moved faster, checking every space twice, 3 times, hoping I'd somehow missed them in my panic. That maybe I'd put things in different pockets. That maybe I was confused. Nothing. Gone. All of it. I grabbed the shopping bag off the floor and half ran to the gate counter. A young woman in an airline uniform looked up from her computer, her expression pleasant and professionally detached. The couple that was sitting in seats 15 and 16, I had to stop, catch my breath. A man about 37 home and a woman with blonde hair. Did you see where they went? She typed something, eyes scanning her screen. Mitchell party? Yes, they took the earlier flight to Denver. Standby upgrades. Departed 23 minutes ago. The world tilted. Denver? My voice came out louder than I intended. Heads turned. We're going to Portland. That's my son. He wouldn't. Their boarding passes were for the Denver connection, sir. Her tone shifted from efficient to sympathetic. She'd seen this before. Maybe not exactly this, but something close enough to recognize distress. I'm sorry. Denver. Not Portland. Not home. Did they leave anything? A message? Anything? Her expression softened further, and somehow that made it worse. No, sir. I'm sorry. I walked back to the empty seats on legs that didn't feel like mine, sat down heavily in the same chair I'd occupied 10 minutes ago. Pulled out the $25 bill from my pocket. Still there, still crisp. The only money I had in the world right now. $25. He gave me $25 and took everything. The plastic shopping bag sat on the chair beside me. 3 bottles of water, including the expensive one Trevor preferred. Trail mix with cranberries, protein bars. I'd spent $12 being thoughtful. $13 remained. I sat there for I don't know how long, staring at that bag of snacks, trying to make my brain accept what had happened. My son, my boy, the child I'd raised alone after Sarah died, worked double shifts for, put through college. Gone. And not just gone. He'd planned this. The whispering, the fake work call, the $25, just enough to get me away from our gate for 15 minutes. Enough time to board an earlier flight to a different city. I stood up, legs unsteady, and made my way to airport security. The officer behind the desk had kind eyes and the tired face of someone who'd worked the night shift. My son took my passport, I said. The words sounded absurd, spoken aloud. Impossible. My phone, my wallet, everything. He left me here. She leaned forward, and I saw her name tag. Officer Maria Santos. Do you have any identification? Any way to prove who you are? I looked down at my hands, at the shopping bag, at the $13. I have nothing. Officer Santos wrote everything down. Names, addresses, flight numbers. She gave me a case number and suggested I contact the U.S. Consular Agency downtown. Her sympathy was genuine, but it couldn't change the facts. I had no ID, no money except $13. No way to get home. I walked away from her office, forms in hand that meant nothing without identification. The terminal stretched ahead of me. Shops, restaurants, gates full of travelers with phones and wallets and futures planned beyond the next hour. My reflection in the massive windows showed a man alone. 65 years old, gray hair going white at the temples, wearing a flannel shirt I'd bought specifically for this Alaska trip because Trevor said it looked good on me. The backpack hung empty from one shoulder. The plastic bag dangled from my other hand. Behind my reflection, planes took off, rising into cloudless blue sky, their engines roaring promises of destinations and arrivals. One of them carried my son. I found a bench near the terminal exit and sat down. Let myself feel it for exactly 5 minutes. The shock, the betrayal, the fear of being stranded 2,000 miles from home with $13 to my name. Then I stopped. I didn't cry. Men like me, men who built businesses from nothing, who raised children alone, who survived wives dying and racist clients and 1,000 small indignities. We don't have the luxury of falling apart in public. We survive first, we process later. The businessman in me, dormant these past 5 years since retirement, woke up. I needed a plan, a real one. First, identification. Second, money. Third, home. I created a mental checklist the way I used to before board meetings, back when I was negotiating million-dollar contracts with corporations that tried to lowball me because they thought an older guy running a small firm was someone they could push around. They learned different. So would Trevor. The consular office was downtown. I walked there, 25 minutes through streets where tourists bought overpriced souvenirs and locals went about their normal Thursday morning business. The sun felt good on my back, despite everything. The office was small but official. American flag on the wall, photo of the president, a seal that said, United States of America. A woman sat at the front desk, black, about 55, with silver-streaked hair pulled back professionally. Her nameplate read, Brenda Hall, consular officer. She looked up as I entered, and something in her expression shifted when she saw my face. Recognition, maybe. Not of me personally, but of the situation. The story written in my empty hands and desperate eyes. Tell me what happened, she said. Start from the beginning. So I did. I sat across from her and explained it all. The Alaska trip, the airport, the whispering, the $25, the empty seats. My son left me at the airport. My voice stayed steady. I was proud of that. Took my passport, my phone, my wallet, everything. I stopped because saying more would make it real, and part of me still couldn't believe it. Brenda waited, pen poised over a form. He's been living in your house rent-free for 2 years, I continued. I think he wants to keep it. Wants me gone. Something shifted in her expression. Professional distance giving way to something personal, something angry. She set down her pen. I've been doing this job for 15 years, Mr. Mitchell. I've seen people stranded for a lot of reasons. Lost passports, stolen wallets, missed connections. She paused. I've never seen a child do this to their parent. Can you help me? Yes. She pulled out fresh forms. We can issue an emergency passport, 3 business days minimum. It requires payment of $135. I emptied my pockets onto her desk. $13, some Alaska coins, a breakfast receipt from 3 days ago. Brenda looked at the money, looked at me, made a decision. Wait here. She left the office. I sat in the plastic chair staring at my $13 spread across her desk and thought about Trevor as a little boy. How he used to help me in the garage workshop on weekends. How I'd taught him to use power tools safely. How he'd stand on a milk crate so he could reach the workbench. How I'd worked 60-hour weeks so he could have new school clothes. How I'd cashed in part of my retirement early to pay for his wedding because he didn't want debt. How I'd let him and Amanda move into my house when he said they were going through a rough patch financially. 2 years of rough patches. Brenda returned 10 minutes later with paperwork and news. Payment deferred until you reach home? There's an emergency assistance fund for situations like yours. It'll cover the passport fee and give you $400 for immediate needs. She slid forms across the desk. You'll pay it back eventually, but for now, you have what you need. $400 felt like a fortune. Why? I asked. Why are you doing this? She met my eyes. Because I can see the kind of man you are, Mr. Mitchell. 15 years doing this job taught me to recognize who will and who won't pay back the fund. You will. I can see it. She paused. And because what your son did is unconscionable. You're not broken, though. You're angry, and angry people find their way home. 3 days later, I boarded the flight to Portland. Economy, middle seat, between a businessman with expensive cologne and a college student who never looked up from her laptop. My emergency passport rested in my shirt pocket, pressed against my heart. $320 remained in my sock. The other $80 I'd spent on the flight and a cheap hotel. The plane taxied down the runway. Through the small window, Anchorage shrank beneath us. The wheels left the ground. I didn't look back. My mind was already in Portland, already at my front door, already planning the expression on my face when Trevor walked in and found his father waiting. The wheels hit runway concrete with that jarring thud that says you're home. The plane tilted as we braked, engines roaring in reverse. Through the window I saw Portland. Rain, dark clouds, evergreen hills, the familiar airport buildings. Home. But home was different now, not a refuge, a battlefield. The rideshare driver had a Trailblazers air freshener hanging from his mirror. Young guy, probably 25, chatty at first until he sensed I wasn't interested in small talk about the weather or traffic. He pulled up to my house 35 minutes later. I stared at it from the back seat. Pale green Craftsman, white trim. The garage where I'd spent countless hours building cabinets and fixing engines. The workshop that was my sanctuary. $750,000 of real estate. My life's work, my security. And Trevor lived there rent-free, thinking he could take it all. I paid the $42 fare, added $3 for tip, calculated generosity, and thanked him. Stood on the sidewalk with my nearly empty backpack, looking at my own house like I was seeing it for the first time. Brad? I turned. Nathan Miller emerged from next door, white hair catching the afternoon light, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. He wore a cardigan despite the mild Portland spring weather, and his face cycled through surprise, confusion, and concern. You're back early. He walked toward me, steps careful on the wet grass between our driveways. Where's Trevor? Is everything all right? The questions came fast. Nathan had lived next door for 8 years, retired high school teacher, observant by profession and nature. He knew when something was wrong. I made a decision quickly. An observant neighbor was almost as good as a friend. They came back early, I said carefully. Different flight. I had some delays. Different flight? His eyebrows rose. That seems odd for a family trip. Tell me what you saw, I said. When they were loading the car, understanding flickered across his face. He adjusted his glasses the way he used to before lectures, I imagined. It was early morning, 4 days ago before you were due back. He gestured vaguely at my house. Boxes, bags, more than seemed normal for laundry. I waved, but Trevor didn't wave back. He seemed focused, intense. Premeditated, careful, hidden. What time? 6:30, maybe earlier, before most of the neighbors were awake. I filed this away. Trevor had moved things while it was still dark, while no one would see, while he thought I was still stranded in Alaska. Thank you, Nathan. I started toward my house, then turned back. If Trevor comes by while I'm out, don't tell him you saw me. Nathan studied my face. Understanding dawned slowly, the way it must have for his students when they finally grasped a difficult concept. I haven't seen you, he said. As far as I know, you're still in Alaska. Exactly. I retrieved the spare key from its hiding place. The fake, rock near the rhododendrons Sarah had planted 20 years ago. My fingers remembered the motion. Muscle memory from all the times I'd used it when I forgot my keys inside. I unlocked the door, disarmed the security system. Code unchanged, which meant Trevor expected no interference. I stepped inside. The house smelled stale, closed up, unaired. Wrong. I moved through the rooms with increasing speed, my heart pounding harder with each discovery. Living room. Grandfather clock missing from the corner where it had stood for 20 years. The one my father had given me when I graduated engineering school. Gone. Dining room. Silver service absent from the china cabinet, leaving gaps like missing teeth. Wedding gift from Sarah's mother. Gone. My bedroom, the jewelry box with Sarah's rings, emptied. My mother's pearls that I'd saved thinking maybe Trevor would want them for Amanda someday. My father's pocket watch. All gone. The garage workshop, my vintage tool collection, gone. The Winchester rifle my grandfather had left me. Not in its case. The craftsman table saw I'd bought new 10 years ago, absent from its corner. The router set, the hand planes, the level that had been my father's, all of it gone. Each missing item was a small theft. Together they formed a pattern. Trevor didn't just abandon me, he robbed me first. My home office occupied the converted sunroom, desk facing the window overlooking the backyard where I'd taught Trevor to throw a football when he was 8, where we'd worked on science projects, where he'd told me about his first girlfriend. On the desk, centered perfectly like an exhibit in a museum, lay a manila folder. I opened it with hands that had finally started to shake. Legal documents, official seals, notary stamps. The top page read, "Deed of Gift" in bold typeface. I scanned quickly the way I used to scan contracts that suppliers tried to slip past me. Property address, 1247 Oak Street, Portland, Oregon. Mine. Grantor. Brad. Legal! My hands didn't shake anymore. They were steady and strong. I signed my name at the bottom, witnessed, notarized, legal. My hands didn't shake anymore. They should have. Instead, they were steady, cold. The anger wasn't hot. It was frozen solid, sharp enough to cut. I walked back outside. Nathan was watering his plants, but I could tell he was waiting, keeping an eye out. "Can I borrow your phone?" He handed it over without questions. I photographed everything. Every empty space where valuables used to sit. Every gap on shelves. The open gun case. The missing tools. The deed of gift from every angle, making sure the signatures and notary seal were clearly visible. Evidence. I'd learned in business, document everything. Assume nothing. Trust nobody. When I returned his phone, he asked quietly, "Brad, if you need anything, if there's trouble," "There's trouble," I said, "but I'm handling it." Inside again, I picked up the landline. Still worked. Called my bank. "This is Brad Mitchell, account ending in 4429. I need to verify there's been no unusual activity. Security questions. Mother's maiden name, Thompson. First car, 1978 Ford pickup. Street I grew up on, Maple Avenue." The representative checked. Her voice came back pleasant and professional. "Everything looks normal, Mr. Mitchell. Last transaction was 5 weeks ago. Automatic utility payment. No attempts to add authorized users or change beneficiaries?" "No, sir. Your account settings are unchanged." One small relief. Trevor had taken objects, taken the house on paper, but hadn't drained my money. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe he didn't have time. Maybe he was planning to do it later. Another small advantage. I still had resources. I sat at my desk, the deed of gift in front of me, and let myself remember. 6 weeks ago, Sunday afternoon. Trevor had brought lunch, sandwiches from the deli I liked. We'd eaten at the kitchen table, talked about nothing important, laughed about a story he told about a difficult client at his tech company. Then, "Dad, I updated some documents for you. Home insurance stuff, liability protection. You know, with Mom gone all these years, we should make sure the house is properly protected if something happens." His laptop was already open. Document on screen. Signature pad connected via USB. "Just sign here. Electronic signature. Super easy. I'll file it with my records for safekeeping." I'd signed, watched the cursor move across the screen as my signature appeared. Trusted my son completely. Never saw a printed copy. Never questioned what it actually said. That Sunday. That sandwich. That signature. That's when I lost everything. Morning light came through the kitchen window, cutting across the table where I sat with instant coffee in a chipped mug. The list I'd made the night before lay in front of me. Items crossed off, new ones added, priorities circled twice. Top of the OAS list. Lawyer. I'd spent the previous evening on Nathan's borrowed laptop, searching. 3 real estate attorneys downtown, all experienced in property disputes and elder law. Michelle Garcia's name appeared most often in successful case outcomes. 18 years of practice, specialization in fraudulent property transfers. At 8 o'clock exactly, I dialed her office from my landline. Garcia Law, how may I help you? I need a consultation. It's urgent. She began offering dates next week. Tuesday at 2 o'clock, Thursday at 11. My son stole my house, I said. I have the document. I need help today. Silence on the line. Then, hold, please. 30 seconds passed. Then a different voice came on, deeper, with the kind of authority that comes from winning difficult cases. This is Michelle Garcia. Tell me what happened. I gave her the condensed version. Alaska, abandonment, the deed of gift, the missing items, the notary seal. She asked 3 questions, each one precise and probing. Is the document notarized? Yes. Is your signature genuine? Yes. Did you know what you were signing? No. Come in at 11. Bring the document and any identification you have. Bring everything you've documented. The locksmith arrived at 2. Company van, toolbox, professional demeanor. Middle-aged guy named Casey Brown with capable hands and a straightforward manner. These are good locks, he said, examining my front door. Lasted well. Why the change? Security upgrade. He nodded, asked no more questions. Worked efficiently. Front door, back door, garage entrance. New keys, new deadbolts, new security. The old keys won't work anymore, Casey said, installing the front deadbolt. If someone has copies, that's the point. He tested each lock twice. $285. I paid without hesitation. Money well spent. 2 days later, I heard it. A car door slamming outside. I moved to the window, parted the curtain 1 inch. Trevor's silver Honda sat in my driveway. He stood beside it, staring at the house. Even from inside, I could see confusion dawning on his face. Something was different. Something was wrong. Amanda emerged from the passenger side, designer sunglasses, expensive purse. She looked toward the front door, whispered something I couldn't hear. The confrontation played out exactly as I'd imagined. Keys that didn't work. Confusion. Phone calls. Then my voice through the door. Your key doesn't work anymore. When I opened the door, Trevor tried his concerned son act. Amanda stayed calculating. But when I showed them the legal papers, when I mentioned the police report and the recording, they crumbled. This isn't over, Trevor said, but his voice was hollow. No, I agreed. It's not. But it's not going the way you planned. 4 months later, I stood in Judge Patricia Morrison's courtroom and heard the words that made everything worthwhile. Based on the evidence presented, this court finds by preponderance of evidence that the deed of gift was procured through fraudulent misrepresentation. The deed is hereby declared null and void. Title remains with plaintiff Brad Mitchell. Trevor closed his eyes. Amanda gripped his arm tighter. The gavel fell. Case decided. My attorney Michelle squeezed my hand under the table. You won. But winning felt different than I'd expected. Not triumphant, just final. Trevor got 18 months probation, community service, and a restraining order. Amanda divorced him when the scandal hit their social media circles. He moved back in with her parents in California, lost his tech job, filed for bankruptcy. I got my house back, but I'd lost my family. The tools were returned, scratched and damaged. The Winchester rifle had a crack in the stock. Sarah's jewelry came back tarnished. Everything could be repaired or replaced except the relationship. My estate attorney drafted a new will. Clear language. I, Brad Mitchell, being of sound mind, explicitly disinherit my son Trevor Mitchell from any claim to my estate. Upon my death, my house shall transfer to the Portland Veterans Housing Foundation. I signed it feeling not anger, but sadness. Protection, not punishment. Today I sit on my front porch with iced tea, reading the newspaper. The house is mine again, legally and emotionally. The workshop hums with new projects: birdhouses for the neighbors, a garden bench for Nathan's wife, small repairs that keep my hands busy and my mind occupied. Nathan waves from his porch as he waters his roses. "Evening, Brad. How's the birdhouse coming?" "Almost finished," I call back. "Mrs. Johnson will have it by the weekend." He nods approvingly and goes back to his watering. Normal conversation, normal neighbors, normal life. I've joined a support group for elderly people dealing with family financial abuse. Turns out I'm not alone. We meet Thursday evenings at the community center, share stories, share strategies, share the understanding that sometimes protecting yourself means accepting loss. Tomorrow I'll finish the birdhouse project in my workshop. Simple work, honest work. Mine again. Then maybe I'll start on that garden table Nathan mentioned wanting. Small projects that connect me to my community instead of isolating me from it. A father's love can't be bought or sold, but sometimes it has to be protected from the very people we think deserve it most. I learned that at the cost of my family. But I kept my home, my dignity, and my independence. The street stays quiet. The house stands solid. I remain on my porch, surrounded by the simple victory of having survived my own son's betrayal, building something better from what remains. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable someone's destruction of themselves and you. A man's true wealth isn't what he can give away, but what he's strong enough to protect when it matters most.